What's up, everybody? It's Jayden. I'm back in the void, back in my basement. I'm excited to bring you all the latest news and notes, catch you up from all the stuff that happened over the weekend and Monday, August 3rd, all the way through what we heard this morning from Jeremy Fowler, all the craziness that just blew up my morning. Um, I'm not in the car today, so I think that's huge because my audio is going to sound 10 times better being in my actual basement. But let's get you guys going without further ado. All right. We've got some news on Bucky Irving and Emeka Egbuka. For Bucky, it sounds like he's been given the most carries at training camp, and that Kenneth Gainwell was more of a receiver out of the backfield, and that Bucky has looked good. We have some updates on Bucky and some thoughts around that as well from Jeremy Fowler that came out literally this morning, August 4th, Tuesday. So we'll get to that. But this is one player that I've kind of sat on the fence about because I know that the talent is immense, but I also have read the tea leaves of what the team has said and what all the reporters have said about the situation and how I think that they want to limit his touches this season altogether. That doesn't mean he can't pay off at his ADP. I just don't think that he's going to end up in a spot where he is a second round type of value. And the problem with that to me is that I do think that there are players that go near him that could have a bigger payoff than him at his current price. And even if a guy like Kenneth Gainwell were to get injured, I do think that the team really likes Sean Tucker and wants to have him involved too, probably in goal line situations, as I've read in the past. So I just don't see the situation where Bucky gets the, I don't know, 17 plus touches. Like I could see him getting to 15 in certain games. He only had roughly, I think it was 5 games his rookie year where he had 15 plus touches. So I don't know. I'm a little bit still spooked by that. I think that there's higher upside players that go near him, and I'm trying to somewhat swing for the fences whenever I'm in that area, just because I think that there are some running backs that have significant upside, such as Bashal Tutin. I'm probably one of the few that still believes in David Montgomery as well. And you can, I'm going to shout out to Fantasy Points, even though I'm not working there anymore. I do want to say that there's another person there that really likes David Montgomery. I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say how. You guys should check out some more recent articles and you could see that. But shout out to the team there. And then it sounds like Emeka Egbuka looks like the top wide receiver so far at camp. This is one player that I haven't taken much of so far. I thought that his price would drop because in my rankings, he was originally a little bit lower than where his ADP was when he was going in the 40s. And now it's risen to like the mid 30s. And I just never bought in. And now I'm like, I still like other guys above him where he's going. But I do realize that this is a situation where he could totally burn me. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he came out and had a 1,200-yard season because I do think that he's a good football player and that he has the right mentality when it comes to like improving and getting better. And that he was kind of miscast in a lot of situations last year. So I'm a little bit scared of this one, but I think just price wise, I'm not as interested in. I'll probably take some more of him just because I want exposure in general. I do think he has a really strong profile, but I haven't taken much of him just yet. All right, speculative on Marshawn Lloyd. Moving on to the next player. So someone reached out to me. Actually, it was my brother, and he was like, "Hey, I want cues for when you're moving on to the next player because I'm listening to you on 2x, so I need to know when to pay attention to who the next person is." Moving on to the next player. Speculative on Marshawn Lloyd, but what you want to hear, not just a third down back. He's doing featured back stuff. He's catching passes out of the backfield. Again, we just need him to be healthy. And so far, to my knowledge, through August 4th, which is Tuesday, he is healthy still. And we're going to hear more on that in a bit. But I'm excited that he has the potential of still being healthy because I do think he could be a factor in that Green Bay backfield this season. Moving on to the next player, we've got DJ Giddens alerts. So it sounds like right now, he was the one that was getting majority of the first team reps in the backfield behind obviously Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, I don't think is he hasn't been practicing as much. Still looking for that contract deal to come through. I don't know that will actually happen, but it does seem like DJ Giddens is the one that is taking those reps right now. There was some talk, and I didn't post about this, but there was some talk because it was a question directly asked to Shane Steichen about Seth McGowan, and he talked about how Seth McGowan is kind of like this big bruising running back. Reminds him a little bit of Zach Moss. I actually did post this, which we'll get to later in his interview. And so, that kind of spooked me a little bit. From what I've read and heard, both Giddens and Seth McGowan have dropped balls on like passing plays, which if you wanted to potentially get in there and have a role, like that's something that you could that is the role that is available is the pass catching work. And if they're not being able to prove themselves in that situation, I do think they're still live to sign a veteran free agent for the team just given the situation there and names that have been linked to them in the past. I'm checking my phone to remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure. Yep, it was Antonio Gibson that was linked to them, which would be exactly similar to what they had last year. I think he's better than Amir Abdullah, but it's very similar to the Amir Abdullah thing that they did last year. All right, moving on. Yeah, this is big. I People may not have heard this. Maybe I talked about this last time, but I'm going to expand on this a little bit in this podcast. Travis Hunter is working as an outside receiver in his limited reps. He's working on downfield routes, not gadget work. We talked about it last time. I'm going to expand on it because there was a Jeremy Fowler report. But this is huge, and it goes really well hand in hand with some of the Parker Washington things we're going to talk about. So I want you guys to just stay tuned, pay attention, because when we get to Parker Washington, I'm going to mention this again, and we're going to talk about Travis Hunter in itself a little bit later. Moving on to the next player, we've got Wan'Dale Robinson. Does a ton of option routes, things specifically only he does in this offense. Believe he is tasked with taking pressure off the O line, which I completely agree. I've talked about this a lot. That his role is going to be the short guy um, who I think is more well positioned to get the ball early and often because the O line is not in a good place for this team. Um, and then believe he leads the team in receptions, which I also agree. People keep asking me for like a bold take. I don't think this is really that bold, but I think Wan'Dale Robinson will end up with better stats than Carnell Tate this season. And it's not like I don't think that Carnell Tate is a good player. It's not that I don't think that Carnell Tate's going to be an awesome dynasty asset or anything like that. One, I think that Carnell Tate's profile did have a little bit of holes. His film looks good, but he does have some holes in his profile. A lot of his plays were on deep plays, explosive deep plays, which doesn't always translate directly into the NFL, especially immediately, especially in a situation where your quarterback isn't going to have like immense time to throw. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not like fully in on Tate right now. Um, and then Wan'Dale Robinson is like a legit wide receiver. Last year, he transformed his game into being like, I can run slants, I can run digs, I can do all sorts of different things outside of just being like an underneath option. So I think this like real version of Wan'Dale Robinson, which it took him like what 3 or 4 years to grow into, um, is a better wide receiver initially than what a Carnell Tate is going to offer in this offense. Um, so for me, like I like targeting Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's actually a sneaky potential wide receiver two in fantasy this season, like to end up as a wide receiver two. Um, I'm not saying that he will be. I wouldn't project it that way, but I'm just trying to say that I think he has the opportunity to be in that spot, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up as a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy this season. Just given that I think that he is a more complete receiver at the moment than most people give credit for. Moving on to the next player, we've got some information on Bashal Tutin, who showed explosiveness and pass catching with 2 long runs and a receiving touchdown at practice, which was day 3 of Jaguars practice on July 31st. Where August 4th right now, so we have more information coming on Bashal Tutin. But early reports were that he is continually looking very good, by John Shipley, by Jamal St. Cyr, by Ryan O'Hallahan, like all of the reporters that I follow, it's not just one, are basically saying, "Hey, this guy looks really good." And the tune keeps kind of changing. It was the chatter was like, "Hey, this might be like some sort of split." And now I kind of I've tracked this for a long time. It's starting to sound more and more like, "Hey, Tootin might get a little bit more of that lead share." Um, and I know Chris Rodriguez was out. He finally came back to team drills recently, but one of the big things to me is that um, I think that the team needed to see Tootin prove it, and so far he has proved it through the spring and early training camp. Um, it may be a split early season just to start, and that's okay because I still think that he has a better profile than a Chris Rodriguez, from a fantasy angle and just like a real life football impact kind of player. So I'm okay with the fact that he would maybe be splitting early. I think that by like week 3 or 4, it's going to be mostly his backfield, and we're going to be cheering on Bashal Tutin as a potential end of season RB1, top 12 running back by the end of the season. Uh, Next, moving on to the next player, there's more on Jayden Blue. I've talked about him a lot. You guys probably need to, if you haven't listened to all of the podcasts, you can go back and listen. But the drum beat's pretty loud on Jayden Blue. He had another practice on July 31st where he, had a strong start. And they keep talking about him as kind of a complementary piece to Javante as a pass catcher and getting him in space. That is the role that I foresee for him. I think that he has so much work, so much opportunity to have an impact in the pass game specifically. He offers something a lot different than what a Javante offers in the pass game. Javante can catch the ball. He can run some like kind of easier routes. Jaden Blue is a legit route runner as a running back. Someone who could run a Texas route, and it's funny because he went to University of Texas, and like actually win a route against a linebacker or a maybe like a safety, probably not a cornerback. So I'm actually excited about him. Now, obviously, they have George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Ryan Flournoy, and I'm not going to mention Jake Ferguson because I actually think Jaden Blue might be a better route runner than Jake Ferguson. Um, so, like, what is the actual opportunity there? But sometimes you just take a guy that we're talking about, like a late round pick in redraft and even in best ball. Sometimes you just take a guy and see how it plays out. I think that he has the opportunity, based off of previous reports, to potentially get up to 10 touches in a game when Javante is playing, which would mean maybe like 5 rushes and five uh, 5 receptions. If they're checking down a lot that game, um, or maybe like 7 and 3 or something along those lines, and that would be pretty huge for a guy like him, especially with that explosiveness. We saw it in like I think it was week 17 against the Giants where he like looked really really good. I got a mixed report on this, but Skylar Bell is in line for wide receiver 3 duties, competing with Keon Coleman. Seems like the Bills are being intentional, getting him reps with Josh Allen. I'm not targeting him in best ball. The report on this was like, hey, he's not competing for wide receiver 3 right now. And I agree. I think I miswrote this. It's like he's competing for wide receiver 3 on the season. At the moment, it's very clearly Keon Coleman versus Joshua Palmer. But that doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity for Skylar Bell even after like the first preseason game or even later in this camp. Like they're trying to get him reps with Josh Allen so they could see what he looks like with him. And no team is going to just say, "Hey, this like third, fourth round rookie guy is going to be immediately in this spot." Um, but we know what the team thinks about Keon Coleman and Josh Palmer, and it's not great. So I think that there is opportunity for Skylar Bell maybe mid-season to win this role. The wide receiver 3 role could just be a mixed bag anyway. It could be a split of like 40% route share and 20% route share and 20%. Like it might not be a fantasy valuable role, but the thing that we know with Skylar the thing that's interesting about Skylar Bell is one, there's definitely some analysts out there that I trust who thought that his tape was really strong. And then um, on top of that, I would say that with Skylar Bell, there's also the mystery box mentality where it's like, I don't know what this is, but I've seen Keon Coleman and I've seen Josh Palmer, and I don't think that those guys are anything special. So at least like if this guy comes in here, what if like there is a 1% chance that he's better than DJ Moore. Don't take that as a super hot take. I'm just saying that there's because we haven't seen it, there's always a chance that the guy is better than what they already have on the field. And that's the interesting part about him, which is why like I think he might be a pretty interesting dynasty asset. Not a best ball target right now. If we hear that he is taking a lot of first team reps, then I would say, yeah, best ball target for sure because Josh Allen offense. Um, and for a guy like going that was drafted on day 3 to be able to earn that role very quickly, I'd be pretty like interested in what his talent actually is. Running back pecking order. Next topic. Chiefs running back pecking order. It sounded like the way that the carries were distributed were Kenneth Walker, Brashard Smith, Amari DeMarcado, and Emmett Johnson. But I'm not going to read too far into this when it comes to Brashard Smith. Everything that I've read about Brashard Smith is, hey, this guy is basically like a specialist pass catcher and return man. And so I'm not going to get too caught up into all of this. I think it's Amari DeMarcado with a chance at Emmett Johnson winning that RB2 role. And let's just say Kenneth Walker got injured tomorrow. I think that the Chiefs would probably they'd probably try to make a move because they want to still be in the mix in general to get a running back. So like Kenneth, this would be a James Conner call or something like that that may end up happening instead. Um, Maybe not an RB situation that I want to do the handcuff for because I think it could be a big mix. There's a video of Rashee Rice running a route here where he just, so I'm speaking from experience. I evaluated Ricky Pearsall and I evaluated Malik Neighbors. I was wrong on Malik Neighbors so far. And on Ricky Pearsall, I was correct. But I'm watching this tape. I'm seeing how Rashee Rice is running this route. And my personal opinion is that I don't see the leg extension I'd like to see. And I'm not a PT, but I've gone through the injury. I've watched a lot of film. And in my personal opinion, I don't know that he's running this route 100%, but I'm not seeing the leg extension I'd like to see out of his injured leg. And it does look a little bit labored. He has time to keep recovering, so there's that. And obviously, he doesn't run deep post routes all the time. But I do think that there's a little bit more risk than I initially thought with Rashee Rice because he just doesn't look perfect in that situation. I kind of moved him down a little bit in my rankings, like above Trey McBride. And I'm trying to remember who the receivers are. I'm going to go to a different page that you guys can't see. Um, Definitely below Devonta Smith, below Malik Neighbors. I moved Malik Neighbors up above Rashee Rice and Devonta Smith, actually. Yeah, so that's kind of the world that I'm putting him in right now. Moving on. You guys should follow Swales on X. He doesn't post very often. A little bit more of a quiet guy. I told him he needs to post more often. But he's a film evaluator, and he's one of the best at fantasy points at doing this. Does a lot of the separation grading, and he thought that Parker Washington looked great like week 2 of last year, and then eventually his role grew, and then he became what he is. And then this year one of his guys is Ryan Flournoy, which is one of my guys, which is one of a lot of people's guys. But I agree that Ryan Flournoy is really good. He's a good follow. They do charter notes, so since he charts like the separation and all sorts of stuff, he will write. Him and Bill O'Brien will write some articles that say like this is what I saw. I contributed to that last year as well. Definitely a good follow. Do that. Moving on to the next situation, there was an interview with Ian Rappaport where he talked about the Deebo Samuel situation and Ricky Pearsall, and he just said, Deebo had options. There was an option with the Indianapolis Colts. which is, interesting. My ears perked up there. And then Ricky Pearsall, status in doubt, which now we've heard he's out for the season. So again, I think I said this last time. I said this maybe like multiple times ago, but don't draft Ricky Pearsall. He's going to show up in your queue. He's going to show up as a top ADP. Don't draft him. Um, the note on Debo with the Colts was interesting because now I think it's like very likely that Keenan Allen will sign there because it sounds like they are interested in having a receiver. And I've gone on record plenty of times talking about this. But if Josh Downs falls because they signed Keenan Allen, I want to buy Josh Downs, and I'm buying Josh Downs right now, and I will buy Josh Downs when they sign Keenan Allen. And I'll wait. I will pause drafting and wait for Josh Downs to fall for like a week, basically, when they sign Keenan Allen, and I will draft more of him at a cheaper price, which might be closer to the price that I paid for him when draft season started. Um, I think the team really wants to get him involved in two wide receiver sets, regardless. I think that from what I've heard, from what I've read, and talking to a few Colts reporters, it sounds like if they add a guy like Keenan Allen, one, he would step in to kind of supplement Alec Pierce while he gets up to speed. Two, what he would end up doing eventually is be more of a third down threat. Like, hey, we're going to run obvious pass down. We're going to do 11 personnel, three wide receivers on the field, and Keenan Allen's going to be one of them. Sure, that would take away some targets from Josh Downs. I would say that's probably like 11 snaps per game or something. And then you are basically saying like the odds of that player, like a Keenan Allen, getting a target over the odds of a guy like Ashton Dulin being out there is probably 5 to 10% more. So you're basically saying that you're going to take away one target maybe from Josh Downs in that situation. And I just think Josh Downs is a very talented player. The way that they talk about using him, which we'll talk about later, and I actually talked in detail about this with Matt Harmon. We both had the exact same opinion, which is great. When he and I are aligned, I feel pretty good about what I was thinking. But Josh Downs is one of my flag plants. I'm actually mad that I didn't write about him earlier this year. But I have been singing his praises all offseason, that's for sure. Moving on to the next situation, we've got some information on the 49ers' fourth practice of the season. So that was July 31st. We're now at August 4th. We've had multiple practices since then, so take this with a grain of salt. But sounds like DeJohn's dribbling keeps standing out, and it won't be hard for him to find a spot. Probably play the big slot, but he can do a bit of everything, to sum it up. So some Z opportunities, etc. And then with Mike Evans, he got some slot work, and I'm sure he won't do that very often, but I do think that the offense is going to do unique things with these players. They like to move players around. They like to get players in motion. And so you might not see him line up just on the left side or the right side and just run deep. You might see him motion in and then technically become the slot receiver, cutting underneath the original slot receiver for his routes, which would be very exciting for a guy like Mike Evans. I kind of see it as similar to what happened when he was with Liam Cohen, maybe a little bit like that, where he had a pretty big season. I'm excited about Mike Evans this year. Moving on to the next topic. Let's see what we've got here. We've got some interesting things on the Falcons. And on the Falcons, we've got Tua talking about Zachariah Branch. He says, you see him and he's usually open. Again, I keep hearing really strong things about Zachariah Branch, that he's been a standout early and the drumbeat is building. I think he's a really solid late round dart throw right now. He's probably not going to play a ton to start the season. Everything keeps pointing to Jahan Dotson, Olamide Zaccheaus, and also 12 personnel, so two wide receivers on the field, where it would probably be Jahan Dotson and Drake London. But I expect that to flip by some point in the season, whether it's week 3 or week 5, week 8, something. All reports that I keep hearing. And I think that there might be something new on him also within this stream of posts. I usually have a pretty photographic memory. And so like, I think that I have a post on this that comes a little bit later, but Um, I've posted so much that sometimes it's hard to keep up. But he did beat the top Falcons cornerback, AJ Terrell, on a deep route uh, in team drills, not in one on ones, because that's different, which gets me excited. Whenever I hear that somebody's beating, especially a rookie or someone that's not like really that good, is beating a guy like an AJ Terrell, um, I get pretty pumped up because that shows that he's got like legit talent. It isn't, hey, I'm just beating up on cornerback 5 on the team or something. So he wasn't a guy that I was interested in terms of coming out of college, because I thought that he was a little bit more of a gadgety, niche, slotty type of player. But uh, I'm open to the fact that he's just potentially very talented, and yeah, I think that he's a good late round pick in both redraft and in best ball, and then dynasty. I would also potentially try to go after him. I think that there's potential for him to be that wide receiver too on the team, with Drake London leading the charge. Uh, and I have more on this too, but Lamar's going under center, doing play action. Next player, sorry, play action bootlegs. I think we're going to see some bigger explosive plays. Play action creates more explosiveness in both the run game and in the pass game. Um, and so very, very excited about what this could do for some of the players on the team. Instead of staying in shotgun and doing like kind of like zone read type of stuff with Lamar and Derrick Henry, this doesn't give away the direction of run plays. Also doesn't start you like way far back. And so that's why usually under center is better for run plays, and that for like Derrick Henry specifically. And then also play action, usually get a little bit more explosiveness out of that. So that would be good for a guy like Zay Flowers, who's already really explosive, Rashad Bateman, potentially Surratt, Jacoby Lane, Devontae Walker. We'll see how that wide receiver 3 plays out for the Ravens. We moving on to the next situation. We've got some speculation out of One Bills Live. They believe that James Cook sees an uptick in receptions to get a career high of like 50 or so. They did cite like, hey, he got what 30 something last year, and then they cited that Pete Carmichael influence is very apparent at training camp so far, getting the running backs involved in receptions. It's good. Okay, so now I've heard that the running backs are actually getting involved in the receiving game a lot more. The only thing that I haven't fully heard yet is how much that's James Cook versus Ty Johnson versus Ray Davis. But at the very least, it sounds like they want to get these guys involved in the pass game a lot more. So I do think that there's probably some upside for James Cook there. I have him ranked as my running back 4. I've talked about this a lot on various pods, but behind the top 3, which is Gibbs, Bijan, and CMC. Then I have James Cook next. Moving on to the next situation. We get a lot of Luther Burden. I probably should have had Luther Burden in the title of all of this too, because the drum beat's getting a little loud. But Ben Johnson believes Luther Burden is wired like an elite receiver. Again, keep hearing how Ben Johnson doesn't give out compliments like this. Coaches tell us sometimes. I posted something, and we'll get to that one too, on Sean Payton talking about Jalen Waddle and how he had previously told us about Michael Thomas, to draft him in fantasy. And Ben Johnson had literally told us to buy Luther Burden stock, and he keeps talking about him and saying quite literally the best things you could say about him. And we're going to get to some more of that soon too. But this is your sign. The coach tells you, I'm gonna buy Luther Burden stock too. Next situation, we've got J.K. Dobbins. Again, he's an important part of the team. They keep talking about how important he is to the team. That doesn't mean that he's going to be like a 20 touch per game guy. I envision him having a role very similar to what he had at the beginning of last year, where he got roughly like 15 touches a game. And I think that's super valuable for where he goes. It's a guy that if you draft a Bashal Tutin and you're not confident, and redraft at least, if you're not confident in Bashal Tutin getting like a big workload to start the season, you could start J.K. Dobbins week 1 and feel pretty confident that he's going to get you enough points to like slot in as that RB2 for you. I'd pretty much guarantee that in week one he'll rank as a top 24 running back. Um, because I do think that I will probably project him for 15 touches and maybe the touchdown odds for him and all sorts of stuff. He's a really good running back in general. So I'm pretty in on J.K. Dobbins' current price. Sure, he could get hurt, but you can use him until you bridge yourself to that next running back that you end up finding, or it's Bajal Tune. Moving on to the next player, Nick Caley, the offensive coordinator for the Texans, talked about Tank Dell on July 31st. He said, Dell is highly versatile, can move around the field, he's building speed well, has a versatile route tree, and he does not see any restrictions on him. That is the first time that I heard something so bullish on him. So now I'm kind of interested in him as a late round target. Um, you know, we still haven't seen him in team drills and like back to back days with team drills or anything like that. That's the kind of stuff that I think is underrated. We see a guy practice coming off of major injury and we start to think like, hey, this guy's good. But think about what just happened with Ricky Pearsall, okay? He had some like a knee brace thing on, and then 2 days of practice, looked great in practice, but then it started swelling. Just speaking from my own experience, like this is something that happens. You can do so well one day and then so well the second day, but then the third day things just pop up again. So we need like some consistency. If we go through a week and we hear, hey, Tank Dell was practicing every single day, he did a lot, and he's good, that's thumbs up, wheels up. If he is not doing that, we may need to just pay attention a little bit more, and he might just be like a late round flyer, or he's just not going to get there. Moving on to the next situation, there was some Jaylen Waddle chatter that he was creating space in the middle of the field and on underneath routes, and I just want to say, like Jaylen Waddle, one of my biggest flag plants. His price has ticked up so much. I think so many analysts have started to talk about him. Not going to toot my own horn, but I did write about him back in May. So it's been a long time. And I said that he was my biggest target back in May. And now his price has risen to almost the third round, I think, in some situations. I still think that he's worth the price of admission where he's going. I probably would slot him right after Rashee Rice, above Trey McBride in my actual, like if I were to not factor in ADP at all into rankings, I would probably have him there above Chris Olave. I think he's a better player than most of the guys that go after him or near him in general. He's going to be a focal point of the offense. He's going to raise the floor of this Broncos offense in general. I think that's going to be positive for pretty much anybody involved in the offense. So I'm very excited about him. We also heard on the Broncos, Bo Nix's mobility. Basically, he doesn't feel limited. He's not going to hesitate. He's been rolling out in practice. I feel good about Bo Nix too. He's a pretty good value right now. A guy that people aren't really that hot on because his efficiency when it comes to like adjusted net yards per attempt has been like low. But he just got a floor raiser. And a ceiling elevator, I guess you could also say, in Jaylen Waddle. I think that his talent is like that. And I'm pretty sure that what can end up happening, quarterbacks grow over time, getting more comfortable, and then you add a dynamic threat like a Jaylen Waddle, and you could really see things elevate for him this season. Bo Nix, that is. Day 3 of Jags camp, and we're seeing a lot of 11 personnel, and I'll just, I will breeze past this in the future. We just keep seeing a lot of 11 personnel. I think people are worried about, hey, are they going to go 2 wide receiver sets, 1 wide receiver sets? And I think we're just not going to see a lot of that this season. I know they drafted 2 tight ends, but I'm still not like worried about it. I think Liam Cohen's a smart guy. He's going to want his best players on the field. His best players are his 4 wide receivers that he has. It will be a look that they mix in so that they can generate explosives, but I don't think that they're going to be doing it that often. Cyrus Allen was playing the big slot role, usually designed for Rashee Rice. So Cyrus Allen's tape is really good coming out of college. Didn't get an invite to the combine, oddly. Um, this is just one that I'm paying attention to. I'm not drafting Cyrus Allen right now. Maybe in a rookie draft, I'd be down to draft him, dynasty stuff like that. But I'm not interested right now in like a best ball or redraft. I think that there's other picks that are better designed for that at like in the late rounds right now. Um, I need to hear more. I want to see it more. I want to observe things. Sure, and I'm okay like if his price skyrockets to like round 15 or 14 or something, and then I'd start buying in. The opportunity cost there is still not very high when he goes that early. So I don't worry about his price skyrocketing. I don't think he's going to go to like round 7 or anything like that. So I'm not worried about it. Ladd and next player, next situation. Ladd and Quentin Johnston spoke with the media. They talked about doing a lot of motion and shift. They're creating leverage off of motion and shifting. And they're both talking about how they're going to do it a lot more. That's exciting because that is exactly what we want to have happen for our players. It gets them free releases. Very interested in Ladd at the very least right now. Caleb Douglas, I'm gonna go quicker right now because there's some players that I don't think are as important to fantasy. But Caleb Douglas, getting a lot of work with Malik Willis, and again, I think he's going to play a lot this season. You could do worse with a very late round pick, just taking a dart throw on a Caleb Douglas type of situation. The Vikings want to shift to outside zone from mid zone with the influence of Frank Smith, and so far in training camp, that's happening. Usually, that's good. Outside zone has generally delivered stronger explosive run plays, so that would be good for the run game in general. Moving on to Travis Etienne. Based on Travis Etienne's quotes, it feels like this is more of a shared backfield than I initially thought. He just talks about he and Alvin Kamara complementing each other well. He doesn't care who goes out there first, and he talks about both a lot of times. He says like, "We're both going to do this. We're both going to do that." So I'm kind of thinking that this might be more of a timeshare than we thought, and I'm very much not targeting Travis Etienne right now in drafts. I'm also not targeting Alvin Kamara because I don't think there's a situation where Kamara just gets this like every down role, even if Travis Etienne got injured. I think that there's still Devin Neal and Kendre Miller. We don't know that both of those guys will even make the team, but I do think that either one of those guys could factor into the game. Anyway, if someone got hurt, I like both their talents, so I don't think that I'm that into Alvin Kamara either. Um, Staying with the Saints, moving on to Jordan Tyson. He's been highly impressive per Nick Underhill. I keep saying this, but he's my top rookie wide receiver this season. I think he has the ability and situation that is most appealing for fantasy. I do think Carnell Tate's a better talent, but this situation and his role in this offense, from what I read, is going to be more short and intermediate versus Chris Olave, intermediate to deep. Is going to be more consistent on a week to week basis. I think he's a really good route runner, separator, and yards after catch type of guy. And so I'm very excited about what his role is going to be. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to have like a full route share and that this team is going to play fast and throw the ball. So definitely a guy that I'm targeting of the rookie wide receivers so far. Cam Scatterbo, next player on the Giants run game emphasis this camp. Coach Nagy always emphasizes to us that we're going to run the ball. It seems that way in practice. We run the ball a lot. This team's going to be a power run team, and Scatterbo is going to be the guy that leads that charge. There's no question in my mind about that. I do like where Scatterbo is going. I think that he gets all the high value touches, so I am targeting him quite a bit, even though I'm not like super in on the Giants right now. Rookie tight end Eli Stowers. Update from Eagles camp. He's not working with Jalen Hurts yet. Getting most of his reps with Tanner McKee and the backups. Again, I haven't heard anything great about Eli. So I am thinking that he might not necessarily do much this season if there isn't like big injuries that end up happening. So I'm not really interested in him for this season. Something that may come up in future seasons, but not right now for me. Not drafting him in a redraft league at all or in best ball. Mekhi Lemon, staying with the Eagles. Mekhi Lemon is mainly operating out of the slot, but he did get some outside reps. Something I'm going to keep track of. I keep hearing, hey, I want to know what his route share is going to look like. I do like the player. I'm not happy with the fit in the offense with Jalen Hurts. But if he is going to get a full route share, I think you might just take a flyer because of where he goes. He goes in a range that's very palatable to take a rookie wide receiver that has like a really strong profile. So I just need to hear that he's going to play in 2 wide receiver sets because I do think that it matters for this team because I think they're going to run 2 wide receiver sets more often than we would expect. It sounds like Stribling is going to be a factor early. I keep talking about him, but yes, I'm going to draft Dejon Stribling until he gets into like the 120s or 130s. John Shipley wrote about the Bashal Tutin, Chris Rodriguez situation. Chris Rodriguez aiming for a week 1 return. Of course, he'll be a factor. How much is he going to be a factor? All good questions. He did practice a lot more yesterday, August 3rd. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But, Bashal Tutin, by all accounts, is taking advantage of his opportunities, which is what I want to hear from that situation. Coffee break. I sat down with Eric Biemafor and Pat Kerrane, 2 guys that I have listened to for so many years now, doing best ball drafts and FFPC main event drafts. You guys should check that out. We had a really strong discussion on the Jags wide receiver room, and I was so hell bent on Parker Washington, and Pat Kerrane was not as doesn't believe it as much. Was talking a lot more about Travis Hunter. And then we got more information on the situation. This was before we knew that Travis Hunter was lining outside and that there's some more stuff on Parker Washington coming. But it was just really interesting to have that discussion because obviously everyone knows how strongly I feel. So I like to hear why it's not going to work. Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the field in 1 wide receiver sets, 13 personnel above Michael Wilson. I'm not drafting these Cardinals players very much. I'm not excited about the offense. I think that there's a lot more risk with LaFleur than people might be throwing out there because a lot of people think, hey, this is a McShanahan offense, but we've seen guys get into this role and still struggle as head coaches. And I just think that the way that I'm hearing the way they're operating so far, I'm not excited about what I'm hearing. Yes, they're going to do motion. They're going to do all the cheat code type of things. They're going to try them. But I'm not excited about what I'm hearing in terms of the deployment specifically of Marvin Harrison, the deployment specifically of Michael Wilson, and kind of pigeonholing them into more specific roles. I want to hear coaches basically say I like this guy. I'm going to find ways to get him open. The stuff that you hear Mike McDaniel talk about, maybe he wasn't the best head coach, but he's a really good play designer. Yeah. And then the Carson Beck effect, which we're going to get to in a little bit too. I'm just not in. Not into that situation. Moving on to Tank Bigsby, which we'll have more on too. It sounds like he's the standout offense player in camp so far, per Elliott Shore Parks, which people have up and down opinions on. Definitely something that I am keeping my eye on is his utilization comparative to Saquon Barkley, because there is a report that I'm going to get to here that talks about how they're roughly sharing 50-50. You could say that that's just hey, we've got a veteran out there and we might want to split that up a little bit more so that we don't use Saquon too much right now in training camp where it doesn't really matter. But also Tank Bigsby has looked really, really good. Does that give him an opportunity to take more running back share? I doubt that it would ever be 50-50. But could it be 65-35? Something that we're not planning for. We're planning for Saquon to be in a situation where he's getting 75% plus of the rushing share. And let's just say that it's 10% less than that or 20% less than that. Yeah, he's just not going to be a good value there. And I actually think that that's possible. So I'm moving Saquon down my rankings a little bit. I do think there's a lot of risk with this Eagles team overall in general with the offensive line, doing that stem cell back treatment, all sorts of stuff that I'm a little bit like scared that this line might still get injured after talking to some experts. So we'll see. Moving on to Jalen Warren, seems to be the RB1 in every running back drill with the offense overall above Rico Dowdle. Um, yeah, I think this is still going to be more of a 50-50 split. I'm interested in Rico Dowdle because I think that he'll get the touchdowns. Jalen Warren, probably the pass catching, some rushing work. Um, to me, it's like choose your favorite on a week to week basis. I don't know who is going to have more fantasy points, but what I'd like to say is that Rico Dowdle has shown that he can carry a large workload. I think that Jalen Warren could, but the team has never done it. I know it's a new coach now, so maybe they will. But I like leaning into Rico Dowdle on this more than Jalen Warren. So that's where I sit. But I'm not going to fault you if you feel the opposite. No, I'm going to skip Monungai because he came back to practice, so not something to worry about at the moment. Jeremy Bernard got some first team slot reps while Roman Wilson got some outside reps. The only thing that's interesting to me about that is that one, Jeremy Bernard's getting some practice with Aaron Rodgers, which is huge. Two, if Roman Wilson is functional at an outside spot, because I do think that he'll probably be the early season starter in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on the field. I think that enables Michael Pittman to get more slot reps, which would be huge for Michael Pittman. So I'm interested in hearing, hey, Roman Wilson's working outside a little bit more. That I don't expect him to be outside that often, but hey, can we get like 5 routes of Michael Pittman in a game, like being on the inside? I think that's possible, and that would be super beneficial for him. Let's see. Moving on to the next situation, more updates on the Seattle running backs expectations. This one from one of the most plugged in beat writers, Bob Condata. I believe that's how to say his last name. Jadarian Price is getting like his expectations for this running back situation. Jadarian Price gets the early down work. George Kalani gets third down and 2 minute drill. Emmanuel Wilson mixes in, potentially goal line. Um, and that is what I have continually said this entire offseason. That's like the bare minimum of what I think is going to happen. I really don't see a situation where Jadarian Price ends up getting all of the work or like a workhorse role in any situation because even if Halani is bad and then they replace him, there's also a chance that they just say, hey, we're going to put Emmanuel Wilson in that spot. And then Charbonnet is expected to come back in, at the latest, like late November. And then Charbonnet would probably slot into that. And then we don't know what goal line is going to look like. It sounds like Emmanuel Wilson could be that. And then it also could sound like Charbonnet would be that when he comes back. So now I'm just thinking like this is the J.K. Dobbins role. This is the potentially 15 touches, but all between the 20s. And it just doesn't feel worth it to me to pay up for Jadarian Price to get that role, comparative to guys that go later, like a J.K. Dobbins. And that's just my personal opinion. Like, is there a situation where he does get more work and maybe he does get goal line? I think the goal line thing is more possible for him eventually. Um, but I also think the Broncos offense is pretty equivalent to the Seahawks offense. So I'm like in the spot where I'm like, you know, J.K. Dobbins is a good running back. He's actually like proven in the NFL that he's a really, really good running back, and Jadarian Price hasn't. And I'm not like super into Jadarian Price's profile. So why am I paying for it? Um, I don't know. I'm gonna take Price some, but I'm not gonna take him a ton. Is where I'm landing. Big day for Elijah Arroyo at practice, but he's still getting passes from Jalen McMilrow. I'm not expecting much from Elijah Arroyo this year. David Lombardi addresses this in his podcast. He says Debo won't have the same full-time Z role he had previously with the team, and I agree. I think they're going to rotate a little bit more. They'll probably try to get Debo into many different roles, and what that does is allow a guy like a Dejon Stribling to play at the Z and then also play at the F. And to rotate into the X. Like, I just think that we're going to see a lot of dribbling eventually, rotating between a lot of different positions because he is a functional blocker. He's a speed threat. And by all reports, everything sounds good on him so far. On Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, and Nick Singleton. Pollard probably gets at least 12 carries a game, ideally 16. Tajay is the change of pace back, and he has his own role. Singleton's best chance is to take Pollard's role, but no idea when he gets that chance. So it sounds like to me that Pollard is the clear lead back. Tajay is a change of pace, and then Singleton is potentially a handcuff for Pollard in some situation. So that makes Singleton a little bit more interesting to me, at least. Moving on, what did Standig tell us? Oh, he told us that Chigakonkwo is lined up everywhere, tight to the line of scrimmage, in the slot, three wide receivers to one side, split out wide, in motion. These are all great things to hear because we want to hear that Chig is going to be used and playing a lot. His career route share is like 54% or something, based on the fantasy points data. Uh, so it sounds like he's going to set a record for that, and I think that it's very likely that he gets over 70%. I would almost argue that 75, 80% is within his range of outcomes right now, which would be huge. Very hard to find tight ends that do that. He's a target of mine. If they sign Diggs, he will fall, and I will take more of him. He won't be a top 2 target earner in that situation for the team, but he will be on the field a ton, and that's something that we don't find at tight end that often. Moving on, Ricky Pearsall is out for the season. Debo is going to slot in at the Z to take some of that role, and Stribling will see an elevated role as well. Something I think most people already know that are listening to this. I didn't think that my original tweet about uh, Ricky Pearsall would end up turning into one, a battle on Twitter, two, the fact that he would actually like be out for the season just by observing that he was wearing some sort of knee brace. Albert Breer had a lot to say on the Rams offense. He said Colby Parkinson is the lead tight end, probably inline lead is what I added to that. Terrence Ferguson is proving to play all over the formation, alluding to the wide receiver 3 usage this offseason. So again, these are two separate positions. We got Colby Parkinson playing real tight end, Terrence Ferguson essentially playing a slot receiver role. So just making sure people understand that those are two separate things. And then Blake Corum earning work to bring explosive runs to the offense. And we have more from Jeremy Fowler that basically says this is going to be some sort of timeshare between Blake Corum and Kyron, which is one reason why I'm not really drafting Kyron that much. And I haven't drafted much of Blake Corum either, but I just like this is probably just going to be a timeshare, and that's okay. Uh, Dejon Stribling missed practice with a hamstring tightness. The team doesn't seem worried. They're saying it's day to day. Everything that I've read on Deshaun Watson is that he just looks terrible at camp. Um, and so to me, like, yeah, sure, he could start week 1 because the team's just like, we don't want to throw out Shador Sanders, but I will also say that it's over for Deshaun Watson. I just don't think that there's any chance that he gets back to anything to uh, and I've been this way for a long time, but now that I'm hearing practice reports and stuff too, there's any chance for him to do anything. So just do not draft him. Absolutely do not draft. Shador is the guy that I would draft if I'm drafting one of them in super flex or like literally last round best ball and you're like, "Hey, I wanted a third quarterback and I'm just going to take a dart throw at that." I think Shador is the dart throw to take for the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation. Um, Staying with the Browns, it sounds like Concepcion. I don't know. KCC is what I'm going to call him. Is playing slot with the first team in 11 personnel. And again, that's what we were hoping for. I do want to hear that he can move and rotate to outside receiver too, because I think that this team, while I do think they're going to play a ton of 11 personnel, people are going to play 12 personnel. I want to hear him play on the outside as well. I don't want him to be in some sort of gadgety role. I think he can do more than that. So let's definitely stay in touch and see like what else happens there, but I'm pretty bullish on KCC this season. I think he's going to be their best receiver overall. Got some information on the Chargers tight end situation. Charlie Kolar and David Njoku were working with the ones for now, and Gadsden has been working with the twos and threes, but the expectation is for more rotation when the pads come on. I'm not buying this tight end room at all. Maybe in best ball, I'm okay with it in a Rondé Gadsden situation, but only because like if the team is down, I could see Gadsden playing a lot and getting a ton of targets and like functioning in a pass catching role. But for now, I'm very much like I I just don't see how this is gonna. I think this is gonna be a three-headed monster and it's gonna be a headache for fantasy. So I don't know when I'm gonna put in Gadsden. I wouldn't draft Kolar or Njoku at all. Um, and so it's just a confusing situation that I don't really want to deal with, and I don't see much upside to the situation unless there's probably two injuries that happen for Gadsden. So right now, it's an avoid for me. Maybe controversial, but I don't know. Sean Payton is interested in Taysom Hill. I talked about this a little bit as something that would maybe make me lower RJ Harvey than he already is, because he would probably take some goal line touches. It would maybe make me lower Bo Nix. I don't know if Sean Payton like didn't really believe in Derek Carr, and so he put in Taysom around the goal line because of Carr. Maybe he likes Bo Nix more and wouldn't do that. I don't know, but I do think that I think it would be smart to presume that if they add a Taysom Hill, that they would use him in a similar spot to how they used him in the Saints, which would take away goal line touches for running backs and for quarterbacks and pass catching opportunities. And then it would make Evan Ingram undraftable as well because they'll put Taysom at tight end randomly as well. But I still think Bo Nix is a target, even if they sign a Taysom Hill, because I think he'll still be a top 10 quarterback this season in fantasy. Sean Payton in this interview basically tells you to draft Jalen Waddle. Says he can line up inside, outside, basically do everything. And so listen to him. Listen to Sean Payton telling you to draft him. He told you to draft Michael Thomas in 2016. Michael Thomas ended up with like 1,200 yards and some touchdowns, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of receptions. Um, Jalen Waddle is very good at football. He is, in my, if I had to stack rank the receivers, I would probably call him safely a top 15 talent at receiver. And now he is a wide receiver one in an offense that's going to score points. I just think that you should be drafting him a lot. Cyrus Allen is okay. The dream's still alive. Sean Payton said Davis Webb is looking for different ways to find matchups for Evan Ingram with the Broncos offense. Evan Ingram has a relationship with Davis Webb dating back to the New York Giants. So there might be some opportunity there. But again, if they sign Taysom Hill, just don't even draft Evan Ingram. I still don't think you should really draft him, but in best ball, you definitely can as like a stack partner with Bo Nix, or a bring back option in one of those situations. Jameson Williams is making waves at Lions camp. Again, not a guy that I am targeting. I think that he's like totally fine where he's going. Like if I were to project where he ends up at the end of the season, it's probably exactly where he goes. I just don't think that he's going to elevate above that because of how many pass catching options they have. Um, if Amon-Ra got hurt and Laporta got hurt, yes, absolutely. Could see him elevating way above that. If just Laporta got hurt, probably not. If if just Amon-Ra got hurt, also probably not. So I'm just kind of like monitoring this situation, and I take him in stacks. I take him in certain spots, but there's receivers that come after him that I'm more interested in. Parker Washington's one of them. I actually talked about this on Sirius XM Radio yesterday and said if I'm really putting Parker Washington where I think he deserves to go from a ranking standpoint, it's like right above Jameson Williams. Like that's where I'd probably slot him. Um, Now I can get him a round or two later, so I'm gonna take him a round or two later. But that's kind of where I would slot him if ADP weren't a factor. Sounds like Sam Laporta is not having any issues coming off of injury so far. That's one thing that you always worry about. He's practiced in multiple days and sounds totally fine. Sounds like he's good to go. I keep hearing from Packers camp that they have a clear cut top three wide receivers. And then now there's also tempo that they want to deploy and they want to let Jordan Love cook. Um, I think that they're going to have more pass attempts this year, which means that there's more routes available. Um, and then on top of that, if they have a clear top three, those guys are going to get higher route shares this season than they have in previous seasons. So let's say someone was running 20 routes. Now there's 25 routes available because they're passing more. And then of those 25 available routes, this isn't realistic numbers, but of those 25 available routes, now instead of getting 15 of them, a player like Jayden Reed maybe gets 20 of them, like, and 20 is how much the max was before. This is just all compiling to a situation where I want to be in on these Packers wide receivers, and I am betting heavily on Jayden Reed as the option that I want. I don't care if he's not in on two wide receiver sets. I think they're going to be playing so many three wide receiver sets this season. I'll get to that in a minute, but that's the one that I want to bet on. It's good to hear that Daniel Jones, and I keep hearing this, Daniel Jones isn't impacted by injury early on. Sounds like he's good. He's practicing in full, doing all the first team reps, testing his Achilles. He's totally fine. Cyrus Allen keeps standing out. I think he's probably the wide receiver four for the Chiefs at the moment. We're going to keep an eye on him to see if he has a way of potentially elevating even above that. Chargers wide receivers and 11 personnel is Ladd in the slot, and then Trey Harris and Quentin Johnson at the X and Z. No idea what the two wide receiver set looks like right now. Debo is in good shape. He doesn't look chubby for once. Great. Xavier Worthy's healthy. Moving on, moving on. Where are we at? A couple of takeaways. So they were talking about like the Chargers offense, Mina Kimes and I think it was Daniel Jeremiah. We're talking about the Chargers offense. And they basically said like Harbaugh has historically put his fingerprints on offenses over time. Um, but now it seems like he's like pretty hands off with this offense. So it's good. It's gonna be basically all Mike McDaniel, right? Which is great. And then in terms of personnel groupings, it's probably going to vary game to game between the three wide receiver sets versus the heavier sets, which makes this really tough to know when the right time is to utilize some of the players on the team, like a Quentin Johnston or a Trey Harris, right? Or even an Aronde Gadsden. So I think that's going to just be like very difficult to figure out. I think it's going to be Quentin Johnston and two wide receiver sets, but we haven't heard that for a fact yet. Um, so I'm still like, okay, let's see what ends up happening based off what they say. Um, I think the target here is Lad, and they want to use Lad and we'll get to it too, in like creative ways. They compared his role to like a Tyreek or Jalen Waddle, and I think he's more of a comparable talent to Jalen Waddle. Um, I think Jalen Waddle was a little bit better so far, but comparable talent to Jalen Waddle, and if they can use him in motion and get him on the move and all sorts of stuff, and they put him as the focal point of the offense, which I also heard they're going to do. He's going to have a really big season in that situation as long as he doesn't get hurt. They also said to keep an eye out for Brennan Thompson. It sounds like Brennan Thompson is live for a wide receiver four role for this team right now, above KLS. Trey Tucker is mainly lining up outside, despite reports of him moving around more this offseason. He's been productive at camp. I think he's probably still going to just be a deep threat for this team, which is fine. He can pay off. He's going to pay off at his ADP. I like am very certain of that, but I don't know that he's going to be a guy that you're sitting here saying like I'm going to put him in on a week to week basis as a wide receiver three or two. Caleb Douglas was in with the first team again. He had the first two plays in 11 drills with Malik Willis. It's good to hear. I think he's going to play a lot this season, even if it's not at the beginning of the season. We're gonna move past the Kyler stuff. There's better information that's later on. Jets have a bad defense, but it's good to hear that Geno is looking sharp and that the chemistry with AD Mitchell is there. I keep hearing a drumbeat for AD Mitchell. I'm excited about him, and how I actually think his fit with Geno is great. So, if you've been following along, I've talked about the Commanders' running back situation, and the funny thing is, in the chat, I think Jeremy Clark here. What's up, buddy? Um, I'll leave your comment up. Uh, we're asking about what the Commanders' running back situation looks like. I haven't heard too much yet. Okay. So it's early. We're still figuring this situation out. It's too early to figure out like exactly what's going to end up happening. But what I have heard sounds like Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt is taking a little bit of a step up in the pass game, which is exactly what he needs to do in order to prove that he's able to be more of a workhorse ish, lead ish back for the team. I think the team really wants Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt to be the lead back for this team. What they would like for him to do is showcase that he can do pass catching stuff. And so far, it sounds like, hey, in back to back days, there were situations where the play broke down and Jaden Daniels needed to get the ball out to Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, and he caught the ball, which is great. That's all I know. But it's good to hear that he was out there, that he ran the route, that he caught the ball, and that it happened in back to back practices. Positive note. We'll see how it ends up playing out. I will give you guys as much information as I hear on that. I am staying very close to that. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt's the running back that I'm drafting of the two, which I know is controversial in the industry. I think most like really intelligent guys are leaning Rashad White right now. I am not. Ben Sinnott is getting a lot of 12 personnel looks. That's good for him. Someone he's interesting to me, just like as a deeper like stash potentially. Eli Raridan, it sounds like he's doing really well in camp, and the team is like not as interested in getting a veteran free agent signed for the team, which is great to hear. So I think there's an opportunity for him to be that tight end too, and by all accounts, that's what he's doing right now. We'll get to the Debo thing again soon. We're gonna skip Charlie Kolar because I'm gonna get to him again soon too. Trevor Lawrence had words that he said on Parker Washington, Brian Thomas, and Jacoby Myers, and I think it's just very interesting. On Parker Washington, he says Parker can do a lot of things. I'd say just his strength in and out of cuts, getting defenders off of him, strong through the catch, can break a lot of tackles. Obviously, the yak, his ability to create is impressive. But he's also good enough down the field to where he's not just an underneath intermediate guy. He can run the whole route tree. I think that's what really makes him dangerous because he can go over the top too. On Brian Thomas, one word to say: speed. Then he elaborates a little bit more on the Jaguars' deep ball situation. Steps that he's taken this offseason, some of the routes that he's run that haven't just been vertical have been impressive. And the way I've seen him work on his craft, getting better every year, I'm super excited for him this season. He's going to have an awesome year. Jacoby Myers. Easy to throw to, spatial awareness, just understands the defense, knows how to tempo routes, set routes up, just a really smart player. I mean, obviously, amazing hands, catches everything. Of those three, there's one guy that he talks about and says is a three-level threat, basically, and talks about the yak, talks about the catching, route running. Like, it's Parker Washington, guys. This is the wide receiver one for the Jaguars. There's no doubt in my mind, based off of everything that I've read. Um, the team has told you that in so many words, and we're going to get to another thing that tells you that very soon. Kyler Murray is starting to take a lead over JJ McCarthy. I think I'm just completely writing off JJ McCarthy. I don't want to talk about it that much more. So far, Makai Lemon is mainly operating from the slot. I got to take this comment off off the screen. So far, JJ McCarthy is mainly operating from Makai Lemon is mainly operating from the slot, and doing underneath work. He hasn't been able to separate on deeper routes just yet, and that is my concern because I don't think that Jalen Hurts is a great he doesn't like to check it down very much. He's better outside the numbers, vertical routes. That's kind of like his like where he's actually really good as a quarterback. And I don't think that Mekhi Lemon is a great fit for him personally. Um, I think that the right play, like I don't know who's like in dynasty or whatever. I think the right play for Mekhi Lemon right now is to let him have this season. Let someone else own him for this season and go get him next year. Where I think that it's possible that Jalen Hurts isn't the quarterback for this team anymore. This is the person that wrote the article on Trevor Lawrence. He quote tweeted it, which was cool. We need to get to this Parker Washington thing. Let's see where I get to it. All right. So this is awesome. So Parker Washington basically tells us that Liam Cohen told him to be ready to play all positions, and he said that you know before it was like I don't know if I'm playing in 11 personnel where the three wide receivers on the field. Now I'm ready to play, and I've been told basically that I'm going to play in 11 three wide receiver sets, slot most likely, 12 personnel, two wide receiver sets, and 13 personnel, one wide receiver sets. This guy is the guy that is most likely not coming off the field for this team. I'm very convinced by that, and we're going to see another reason why in a little bit. Kyler Murray is the quarterback for the Vikings. Debo is going to be used as a wide receiver, kick returner, and running back. So, and I don't think he's going to get like all the routes at receiver. I think they're going to kind of try to like conserve him a little bit based off of what I've read. But yeah, just interesting that he's going to be doing all of those roles. Sean Payton says that RJ Harvey is certainly in position to be the Broncos' third down back. That's exactly what we have projected. Um, it's just a matter of if he can do anything more than that, and I just don't think that that's going to happen, unfortunately. But being a third down back isn't a bad thing. Rams beat writer did a podcast with what am I forgetting? With the Athletic podcast, um, and said the ideal version of the Rams offense has Terrence Ferguson finishing as the third leading receiver on the team. Which I think is probably going to be the case this season. That doesn't mean that he's going to be like some massive fantasy smash player by any means. What it does mean is that he will probably be the best tight end to own, probably good to mix into your best ball portfolios. Um, Not a bad like late round pick in general, and just see what happens. Let's say Devontae Adams gets hurt. Like, what if he's the top two target in this offense eventually? So we'll see. He also said he wouldn't be surprised if Blake Corum and Kyron Williams have the exact same rushing stats at the end of the season, but Kyron will get the pass down work. That is exactly how I think this is going to play out. I do think that they're going to rotate a ton, and that Kyron will get the pass down stuff. So I just don't think that Kyron's a great pick right now where he's going. The concepts of what Mike McDaniel did in Miami will be there, but don't sell it short. He evolves his process as his players evolve, and now he has Justin Herbert instead of Tua. So this is one thing that I like to think through and say, like, are they going to do different stuff on offense? Like, they're going to still use all the cheat codes, but are they like? There was a report about them playing with a little bit more tempo, getting to the line of scrimmage faster, and a lot of people are saying, like, hey, that means that they're just going to get to the line of scrimmage faster, and then they're going to still do motion and all sorts of stuff that is going to limit how fast they play. I'm not disagreeing that they're not going to play like super fast, but are they potentially going to play a little bit faster than people think, just given the fact that instead of a Tua or Jimmy Garoppolo offense, which you would maybe just lean into more like efficiency and less plays, now you've got Justin Herbert, who you feel is a top quarterback. And yeah, maybe you want to do something a little bit different. He also talks about how Justin Herbert can. Mike McDaniel, I think, actually said this about how Justin Herbert can access every blade of grass comparative to the quarterbacks he's worked with in the past. So um, that does mean that there's other avenues that they may explore with him. Very bullish on this offense, by the way. This was big. Ladd will be the focal point of the Chargers wide receiver room, used as a move piece similar to Tyreek and Waddle. People took that as like he the same town as Tyreek. He's not, but he's a good player and he's comparable to Waddle in my opinion. And then Quentin Johnson will be used underneath on drag routes and screens. I think that this is big for both, but I lean into the lad component a lot more, and if they're going to use him in similar situations to a Tyreek or Waddle, on how they would use him, like in motion, cheap motion stuff, and get like basically just create ways that he's just wide open, which is what happened a lot. Um, yeah, I think he's going to have a big season. I think he's somebody that you want to have on your fantasy roster this year. I'm still mixed on Quentin Johnson. He just goes a little bit high, but I could see a reason why you'd be interested in him. Also says Amarian Hampton is the clear lead back with Keaton and Vidal fighting for RB2, but Popper expects Keaton to win the RB2 role. We don't know what that means in terms of mix of all of that. Out of Bengals training camp, we've heard that the Bengals have a ton of under center, motion, play action in training camp so far, and I've heard this from many different outlets. There's more tweets on this in a bit, but I think that that's going to generate better rushing attack, like a more formidable rushing attack, and more explosive plays for this offense that already has very explosive talent. Huge for Packers wide receivers. There was NFL Live where they were talking about, you know, Jordan Love is mainly playing with Christian Watson, Jayden Reed, Matthew Golden. Like Rob Domofsky said, "Hey, this is a less is more approach. We're not going to rotate as much, basically." These guys are going to have record route shares comparative to previous Packers wide receiver seasons. I'm very convinced on that. This is all of my nighttime stuff where I do like the retweeting of stuff that happened like late at night that I don't think people probably saw that I think are big at least. Week one RB update for the Seahawks. Price has gotten a lot of work in the pass game, but it still appears more probable that he'd get many of his snaps on early downs to start the season with Holani as the third down 2 minute drill role. Very consistent reporting by Bob Kandata on that. I think that is most likely what happens for this team. Braden Fajoko, who used to be an NFL player, Simi Fajoko's brother, I believe, who was a Cowboy and I think is on the Chargers. I can't remember. Um, he said that he said Lad McConkey get ready to watch a whole bunch of Jalen Waddle film, which is the comp that I said makes a lot of sense for Lad. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. Chris Brazel's out for the season, so that means Xavier Legette is likely the wide receiver 3 for the Panthers. I'm not interested in a wide receiver 3 for the Panthers. I don't think they're going to have enough pass volume. Everything's going to funnel through Tet and Jalen Coker mainly. Sounds like Mitchell Evans will have a role in this tight end room, which means it's going to be a three-way split at tight end between him, Tommy Tremble, and JT Sanders. I don't want any of those guys. It sounds like for Jonathan Brooks, it was intentional for him to not go 100% until July and August, which he has been going 100% now. There's been great reports out of training camp. People around him feel good about his knee injury and return. So good to hear. Travis Hunter was the player of the day for the Jaguars on August 2nd, and he played on both sides of the ball, had some big plays on both sides, which is awesome to hear. He was lined up as an outside receiver, caught a deep ball. Very cool. Cool stuff. Again, outside receiver. He's going to probably have Parker Washington in the game when he's the outside receiver. Some more context on Chris Rodriguez that I think is interesting. It was day 4 of training camp. Still being eased in on day 4. He got more work in day 5, so I'm going to update you on that. 2 carries in team drills. He got one from Trevor. He got one from Nick Mullins. Tootin hasn't received a handoff from anybody other than Trevor Lawrence, so that's good to hear. And then Grant Udinsky, the offense coordinator for the Jaguars, is praising his efficiency just like Liam Cohen did in the past as well. We will get more information on him. Grant Udinsky also had an interview where he talked about Parker Washington. The question was somewhat around like seems like Parker Washington's making a big play every 10 minutes, and then he goes. Basically, he's not surprised. He's not surprised by him at all, and he thinks it probably is actually roughly every 10 minutes that he's making a play, and he just thinks that this is who Parker is. Parker is always making plays. He's a good player. Every single coach talks about him. Every single player talks about him. Trevor Lawrence, he talks about himself and says that he's playing in every set. This is the target. This is the um to steal Scott Barrett's term, this is the Exodia, like draft Parker Washington. This is the guy this year. A flag plant, no question. Um, Bo Nix tells us he is going to keep using his mobility. I believe that. He's been healthy for a long time, so I think he's totally fine. Brendan Thompson versus Keandre Lambert-Smith. It sounds like Brendan Thompson is getting much more offensive volume. There's a chance that KLS doesn't make the team. We'll see what ends up happening there. Clint Kubiak is pleased with Fernando Mendoza and his work ethic. Good to hear. I mean, work ethic is never going to be a concern with Fernando Mendoza based off of what everybody thinks about him, at least. So not something that I'm really like hanging on to there. There was a Giants podcast that I listened to about training camp, Giants Nation show. Cam Scatterbo isn't doing kick returns, which is good. He's the clear lead back. He might not be an 80-20 running back one, but he is the RB1. Sounds like everyone is fighting for touches around him. He's a target of mine right now. I think that he's a good value where he's going because he's going to get the goal line stuff, probably a lot of pass catching work and some between the 20s stuff too. Of course, he's going to be an injury risk, but I think every running back is an injury risk. So I'm not. And his injury last year was a freak accident. It wasn't something where he like had a concussion or he got 5 concussions or anything like that. I think he is a good pick right now. It sounds like Tez Johnson is having a solid camp for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Again, we always want to anoint these rookies who sound really good on paper. We've heard a lot of good coach speak on Ted Hurst. Obviously, he is the most natural X wide receiver for that team, and that's what the coaches have said. They're not going to put him on the field if he's not like showing out and doing a bunch of stuff to just be out there. Okay. They're going to want receivers that show legitimate talent to be out there. And Tez Johnson has he proved last year that he was an adequate receiver. I would still think that he's probably the wide receiver 4 for this team. If something happened that I would see Tez Johnson get some more playing time, maybe Ted Hurst too, maybe they'll mix it, but I don't think that Ted Hurst is going to get a ton of playing time this year. Unless you see 2 injuries at receiver. I have still taken him late in best ball drafts because I'm just willing to bet a little bit, but let's not forget Tez. Like Tez is still there and he did fine last year. Ted Hurst is also coming from a small program where he didn't even have a ton of yards for the team or like big numbers from that small program. So I'm still a little skeptical on the talent. August 2nd, so that would be day 4 for the Jaguars. Bashal Tutin received all his rush attempts from Trevor Lawrence. Chris Rodriguez had 1 from Trevor and 1 from Mullins. We already talked about that. LeQuint, 2 carries from Trevor on that day. The personnel groupings, heavy 11 personnel. Again, they're going to be in 3 wide receiver sets a ton. In that same podcast about the Giants, it sounds like Jackson Dart and the O have struggled through the first 4 practices. Understandable. They don't have neighbors out there doing a lot. There's a new system. He's working on footwork. I'm fading a lot of this Giants offense. Like Jackson Dart, I'm fading, even though he has a really strong like fantasy profile. I just think that this team is not going to put it all together, specifically this year. There's a lot of moving parts for the team. I'm mostly interested in Scatterbo and Neighbors and Isaiah Likely, and I like to kind of like divvy up who I'm taking of that team. But those are the 3 that I'm targeting the most. Isaiah Likely is receiving the most targets among pass catchers so far. Again, we know that Neighbors has missed time and has been limited, so take that with a grain of salt. Sounds like Eli Heidenreich's running with the second team offense, while Lou Nichols, who I don't even know much about, is running with the first team offense. um, that's when, when Jalen Warren and Rico Dowdle are not doing things. So I don't know. I'm still waiting to hear more on Eli Heidenreich. I wouldn't take that like too much to heart so far. John Keim was reporting, and we're going to have more on this as well, that the Commanders are still monitoring the Stephon Diggs situation, and he sounds like a good fit for the offense where they want to get a lot of underneath stuff and yards after a catch. Fits exactly what Stephon Diggs did last year. Did a Reddit AMA yesterday. It was awesome. You guys can go on Reddit and search my name and find it and see all the questions that people answered or asked that I answered. The 49ers RB2 battle. So Kalen Black is now dealing with an injury. Jordan James is hurt. 49ers signed Khalil Herbert. I'm still betting on Jordan James. Now that they have Debo, like you could see Debo potentially functioning in some sort of running back role too. But if I'm betting on one, I'm going to select Jordan James because he's had an offseason of actually learning pass catching duties, all sorts of stuff like that. And Kalen Black has not, and now he is missing time. And also, those are the two things that he needs to work on based off of his profile from college. I think Jordan James is the better selection of the two at the moment. Jalen Polk retired, which means that there's more opportunities for Bryce Lance to potentially be wide receiver 4 or even wide receiver 3 if he proves to be really good over Devon Vele at some point. Jordan Love confirmed that Matthew Golden is playing the X wide receiver, which means Christian Watson is playing the Z. That makes me a little bit more interested in Christian Watson. Maybe he's not just a deep threat this year. I'm going to pay attention more to hearing how they're utilizing Christian Watson. Keep hearing great things about Kenneth Walker in the pass game. Talked about the screen passes that they're throwing to him. He also beat defenders on a Texas route. So it sounds like they're getting him involved in the pass game in general, which is great to hear from a role expansion perspective. It's really hard for me to rank him. I think I might rank him above Jonathan Taylor, which would mean he would be my RB6 behind Gene T and James Cook, and then Kenneth Walker, and then Jonathan Taylor. I think that's where I'm landing right now. RB7. So I forgot about Chase Brown. Chase Brown is right after James Cook for me, and then Gene T, and then Kenneth Walker, and then Jonathan Taylor for me. And then I think Saquon, and then Derrick Henry. I think in that order. Then Hampton. Then Achane. Romeo Doubs playing inside a lot, tons of option heavy routes, very different role from what he had as the X receiver in Green Bay. And he's showing some improvement after a slow start in camp. Like I expect that for new receivers, especially guys that are playing a completely different role than they've played in the past. It's good to hear that he's doing all these option heavy routes. He's probably going to be a more like underneath receiver based off of what I'm reading, which should be good for him. I think he's actually a pretty decent value where he's going right now in drafts. Always upside, especially if you believe that AJ Brown has that degenerative knee situation too. Daniel Jones has taken off to run 4 or 5 times already this week. It sounds like he trusts himself off the injury. Mo Alley Cox also talked about it. Draft Daniel Jones if you like his talent. I don't think you should be that worried about him. It sounds like he's passing every single test, but with flying colors, multiple days of practice, doing the same stuff. The Cardinals released their depth chart, and Jeremiah Love was listed as RB2. I don't really care about that. I think that Jeremiah Love's role is probably going to end up being the lead back. So maybe like a 60-40 split to start the season with an Algier, and then eventually like a 70-30. They may not like go balls to the wall with Jeremiah Love yet this year. They're not going to be that competitive. Do they really want to burn him out in his rookie season? It sounds like they want to have Algier involved as well. That's okay. I'm still not that interested in Love in general, just mainly because I think this offense is going to struggle a lot. They have a really tough schedule this season. And I like the running backs in round like mid round 4, late round 4, and round 5 a little bit more, given the opportunity cost of where I have to take a Jeremiah Love, some of the receivers like George Pickens and others in that spot. And then it sounds like Trey Benson is RB4. James Conner hasn't gotten 11 on 11 work, but they're still slotting him in there. There's more on Trey Benson as well, but it does sound like he might be the odd man out for this backfield if they don't trade James Conner. There's some speculation that the Panthers may have a higher pass rate than we expect this season. Um, we'll see how that goes. If they have a strong rushing attack, they'll probably lean into the rush anyway. Sounds like Kayshon Boutte is still very likely to get moved, but it may take a while. They may wait till like roster cuts happen, and then once they're getting close to that roster cut situation, they probably don't want to cut Kyle Williams, who has also operates as like the deep threat receiver. So it sounds like Kayshon Boutte is going to be the odd man out. It's just a matter of like what team needs him, what can they get for him, all sorts of stuff like that. It doesn't sound like he's going to be on the Patriots long term. Trey Benson was absent from practice. No additional details, but again, think he's the running back that's going to get moved or cut. If you guys remember, he did like my tweet that said that he may end up in Green Bay. So that's interesting to me. Sounds like he doesn't want to be there. Marvin Harrison had a bad practice. He's stacking not great practices over and over again. Kyle Monungai came back to practice. Not anything new there. Okay. Sunday, Jeremiah Love got the first team rep on with the first team offense. Again, I think this is going to be a Bijan rookie year, kind of like Bijan Algier split. So I don't really care who's getting the first rep. I think that he's going to have a significant role in the offense. I'm just not that interested in the offense in general. I believe in the talent. Don't believe in the offense. There's some very interesting. We'll get to it in a second. The belief is we could see Carson Beck in late October or early November, unless something unforeseen happens. It's speculative, but again, I think that it makes a lot of sense. Carson Beck is going to nuke the fantasy value of all of these Cardinals options, and that is one of the main reasons why I don't want any Cardinals player. I think the best thing for Carson Beck will actually end up best thing for fantasy will end up being for Jeremiah Love, but I'm not interested in all of the other situations that may play out there. Okay, let's skip some other things to get to this Luther Burden thing. Ben Johnson basically said destiny to be one of the best wide receivers and compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jarvis Landry. He flips a switch and feels invincible, and the best players out, just like the best players out there, uses so many different superlatives to describe him. Again, how many times does this happen where a coach is actually telling us like this is the guy? He mentioned him in very similar ways that he mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jarvis Landry in years past, which is for the slot receiver, the underneath guy who is a beast that you just feed him the ball and let him cook, right? Like get yards after the catch. He's talked about him as a yak monster as well. His role is going to be more predictable on a week-to-week basis than Rome Odunze, sorry. And so I think that he's the guy that you want to target in this offense. I think that I went on a rant about this, but if you're looking at the Bears pass catching situation, you have to, if you're going to make a bet, it's going to be either Loveland or Luther Burden. If you don't think that Burden can ascend as a talent, then bet on Loveland. If you think that Burden can ascend as a talent, then bet on Burden. And I wouldn't take both of them. It's going to be one of the two that you would want. So that's my opinion. And I'm betting on Burden. Yeah, guys, I had my last day at Fantasy Points. I will have an announcement soon on what's next, but very excited for what's next. Worked with a great team at Fantasy Points. Just another opportunity on the table. I am doing SiriusXM stuff with Fantasy Life. You guys can check that out. Pass catcher report for the Jaguars on day 5. So now we're finally at yesterday. Awesome. Good things here for everyone, but love to hear that Parker Washington and Trevor Lawrence stayed after practice to work on plays they missed together. Again, Parker Washington, tireless worker. What else do you want, guys? Brian Thomas had some great plays yesterday, connecting on a deep ball with Trevor Lawrence. Again, I keep hearing primary vertical threat, connecting on deep balls. higher volatility, less boom, more bust for vertical threats in fantasy. I wrote a big article on it. That's what I think is going to happen. Brian Thomas playing at a high level is huge. It's really important to the offense. That doesn't necessarily mean that the NFL value is equivalent to fantasy value there. That's my opinion. I wrote a big thing on Loveland, but basically, I think that he has the opportunity to ascend to an elite talent. The question is really whether or not you think that Luther Burden can ascend to a really good talent. And if Luther Burden is a really good talent, that means that Colston Loveland will likely not have as big of a season as you'd like to see from him. So that is my opinion based on the research. Bengals are utilizing more under center looks so far, training camp and 12 personnel. And Eric All continues to unlock the under center and 12 personnel look. Eric All is going to play. He's going to make Mike Gesicki probably not play a lot. I don't want any of the Bengals tight ends. Javonte Williams was announced to the leadership council for the Cowboys. He's an important player. He's going to come off the field a little bit more this year, but he wasn't really catching that many passes anyway. He's going to be, I'd almost say like a Jamal Williams-esque type of player where it's like, dude, this guy's just scoring a ton of touchdowns. He's live to have the most touchdowns in the NFL this year for sure. That's something that's within his wheelhouse. Marshawn Lloyd hasn't missed a practice yet. That's huge. There's no timeline for Luke Musgrave to return, which is another reason why the Packers might utilize more 3 wide receiver packages because they don't have a functional second tight end to make sense to take Jayden Reed off the field. Again, I think Jayden Reed's a good target. Saying in the void, yeah, I'm in the void. Wow, 1,200 people. That's crazy. Didn't think that I would ever get to that kind of account. Thank you guys for watching. You can have questions and stuff. I'm going to stay late and answer and respond to everything that I can. Obviously, just trying to catch people up. There's a lot of news to do so for today. Yeah, everything is positive on Daniel Jones. I don't need to touch on that more. John Shipley wrote about Parker Washington and said here, obviously tough to know if there's a wide receiver 1 for this team because it could just be whoever on a daily basis. But if there is going to be a wide receiver 1 on the team, his money is on Parker Washington based off of what he's seen through OTAs and training camp. Again, you don't have to believe a beat writer's projection, but it is notable that he feels that it seems pretty obvious that this would be the wide receiver 1. And then this is important to me because he is observing practice and is seeing it in a way that he's saying, nothing I have seen through 4 days has suggested to me that he will be coming off the field very much. Going back, now you're piecemealing things that Liam Cohen has said about playing outside, inside, piecemealing things that Parker Washington has said that Liam Cohen told him about playing in 12 and 13 personnel along with 11 personnel. And then also Shipley saying basically from what he's observed, there's not much situations where Parker Washington comes off the field. He's the receiver to own, guys. That's flag plant everything. Again, I would draft him as if he scooted up to where Jameson Williams is going, I'd still take him. Moving on. Thank you guys for all of the likes and subs and all sorts of stuff. If you want to share it with friends and family, I know people want to keep me a secret, but help a brother out. Answered every question in the AMA for Reddit. Mitchell Evans and Tommy Tremble were back at practice again. Tight end rotation for the Panthers. I don't want anything there. Packers running back room. Damian Martinez is a player to watch and has the beat writer's attention. Jordan Love spoke pretty highly about Marshawn Lloyd. Players always speak highly about players, but he's said that he's a playmaker in the run and pass game, which is good to hear. Not just like hey, we're going to use him in the pass game type of thing. Shane Steichen had an interview, press conference where he talked about Seth McGowan. I talked about this earlier. He mentions how physical he is and that he reminds him kind of a Zach Moss as a fair comp for him. I don't have an opinion on that yet. I still think it might be DJ Giddens, but I think they're live for a veteran. He gave us an update. Shane Steichen gave us an update on Alec Pierce. Doesn't really have an update, is the update. But that he's working hard and he's heading in the right direction for sure. So I feel really good about that moving forward. Brennan Thompson talked about how he feels like he's Tyreek Hill. I'm saying don't act on that so far. Okay. Day 5 of Jaguars practice. 43% of the rush attempts were to Bashal Tutin. 43% of the rush attempts were to Chris Rodriguez, and 14 to LaQuint Allen with the first team at least. And then, yes, Tutin was seen on kick return duties, and Chris Rodriguez had a nice truck stick. This is the positive news for Chris Rodriguez day. Obviously the first day that he was more like fully integrated into team drills. So something I'm watching for sure, and we'll keep you guys updated. I am still going to say that I'm more into Bashal Tutin, and I'm going to keep targeting him, but I'm always going to keep my mind open to what I see and hear, and adjust whenever I think there's something notable. This was something notable. It's the first notable thing that I've seen. There might be more tempo for the Chargers. I talked about this earlier, but it could just be that they're going to play faster, getting to the line of scrimmage so that then they can do motion and diagnose like what the defense is doing so they can get into the right play call. Something I'm going to be paying attention to for the Chargers. It would be crazy if they played faster because nobody is projecting for that team to play fast this season. Greg Dulcich missed 2 days of practice in a row, something I'm keeping my eye on because he's been one of my favorite late round tight end targets. I haven't heard anything on Oronde Gadsden other than him practicing with the 2s and 3s so far. And Charlie Kolar, there's a note that he caught a touchdown pass in red zone period from Justin Herbert. So again, I just don't think you draft a tight end from the Chargers right now. All right, now we're to today, August 4th. We had some fire coming out of Jeremy Fowler this morning. Some insight on Travis Hunter. Screens, bubbles, X receiver, F is slot. Third downs, red zone, second 2-minute pack has packages for him. Yeah, I think this is big. This means that they're going to use him on the outside. Also some inside, in clear pass down situations sometimes. I just think he's going to put, and then also this whole thing just sounds like very specialist-ish type of role. So good to note. And I don't think that Parker Washington's the one that's coming off the field in these situations. Even if he's playing the F, I think that they've talked about Parker playing on the outside too. But yeah. Then we get a report on Kenneth Walker getting the majority of carries, can do everything they need. It sounds like he's doing pass catching stuff, blocking between the tackles, outside, under center. There's just so many things that are pushing Kenneth Walker in the right direction. I'm pretty bullish on his situation. The hard part is that there's just so many good running backs in that same cluster. So stack ranking them, the difference between them is all very small. And it's probably just going to come down to who gets hurt. And Kenneth Walker is probably more likely to get hurt than a lot of these guys. Him and Jonathan Taylor are probably the most likely to get hurt. So, yeah. Tyquan Thornton is the wide receiver 3 for the Chiefs right now. He keeps getting first team work. We're going to get to Josh Downs in a second. Matt Harmon had some good things to say about this X wide receiver utilization for Hunter. I think it's actually the right fit for him, which means that the slot is more open for Parker Washington to play. Okay. On Brian Thomas. Also in the same Jeremy Fowler thing, Brian Thomas, every time, vertical threat. Hear it again. Word decoys being used, drawing the top corner to open up things for the middle for Parker Washington. It's the exact play that Liam Cohen designed, the dagger concept, where he sent BTJ straight up the field. I showed you guys the play in one of these clips before. He went straight up the field and then draws the safety to go deep. And then Parker Washington, dagger concept, does an in route right underneath. right behind the linebackers, in front of the safeties, catches the ball. The play is designed for Parker Washington. Of course, if the safeties don't go with BTJ, you're going to throw the deep ball. Um, yeah, Parker Washington's the right guy to own. Kenyon Sadiq, a setback. He's going to be out for a while. He didn't practice at OTAs, coming off hernia surgery. It's going to be hard for him to catch up to Mason Taylor without practice. I don't think that Mason Taylor is like an awesome tight end, but he does function. He has a more clear like inline tight end role, and it's going to be hard for Sadiq to get that role because he's not even practicing. He hasn't practiced very much at all. And then on top of that, like he's competing for slot reps with Omar Cooper. So I just think that it's going to be a slow burn for Kenyon Sadiq to start the season, even if he's back for week 1, which the reports said that he was. Because he's not doing anything in practice. And then he's competing with an actual receiver at the slot role. And then he's competing with a tight end who has a better inline tight end profile than him for that tight end role. So it might be a while before we see anything positive out of Kenyon Sadiq. Something that Matt Harmon and I talked about Josh Downs was just the opportunity for him to line up outside. The slot rate is likely to fall closer to Wandale and Ladd. And that they're going to find ways to get him free releases. Just watch the clip with Matt Harmon. We talked about it. You can watch the whole thing, actually, because this only has the part that Harmon talked about, and I also talked about it, and we were talking about it pre-show, where it's like, dude, 2 wide receiver sets doesn't mean you can't be in the slot. Also, 2 wide receiver sets, you can get guys in motion and get free releases for these guys all the time, and that's exactly how I think they're going to utilize Josh Downs. So I think he's a great pick. Even if they sign Keenan Allen, I think he's a great pick. Also, from the Fowler report, Kenneth Gainwell will be on the field a lot. Question is how much. Does he have a path to more of a role than Rachaad White did? I think he's a better rusher than Rachaad White, so there's a chance. I've been targeting him all summer instead of Bucky. Caleb Douglas, again, doing a lot of stuff at practice. I'm not going to talk about him too much because I've already talked about him a lot, but he is the guy that I think has an opportunity of the late round dart throw rookie receivers to play a lot this season for the Dolphins. All right, that's all the news I had. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we're going to go to the single box. And now I'm just going to answer questions that people have. Let's see. What's up, Zane? Nothing. I'm in the void. Hello. Thank you for doing Hello. Thank you for doing this. I found you on Yahoo Fantasy YouTube video. You've provided me with great info. Greatly appreciated. You're welcome. Always here to answer questions anytime. Such a good mid-work day listen. Awesome. Thank you very much. I have my home league PPR draft in a few hours and wanted to ask you this question: which late tight end should I pick between Brenton Strange, Chigakonkwo, Hunter Henry, Ferguson, Jawan Johnson, and AJ Barner? I would stack rank this as Chig. Man, the next one's hard. Chig, definitely number 1. Hunter Henry, number 2. Brenton Strange, number 3. Jawan Johnson, number 4. AJ Barner, number 5. And Terrence Ferguson, number 6. That's how I'm going to rank them. Good morning to the void. Yep, I'm in the void, guys. Thoughts on Devonta having a hammy non-issue or something to monitor? Obviously, something to monitor. Like, we need to know he has plenty of time to get healthy. Hammies are usually like 2 to 3 week injuries. If he was a rookie, it's different. Like, rookies need that time. He is a veteran, doesn't need time. I'm not that worried about it. If he actually sits for 3 weeks, that's actually a good thing. A lot of times guys try to come back too early from hammies. So what I'd like to hear is that if he does have a hamstring injury, that he's sitting out for the requisite time that it takes to heal. Why do you think Waddle had a couple of down years in the past, even with McDaniels? I'm not totally sold on him based on that. The film's really good on Jalen Waddle. Like, he is a very, I I would say like tier below elite talent at receiver. What I'll say is the times where Tyreek wasn't on the field, Jalen Waddle had like crazy elite metrics. Um, the problem with the way he was utilized with Tyreek is that they basically put Tyreek in the situations where he is option one and basically option two. Like he was running the route that is designed to be super wide open, and Jalen Waddle was not. And that just like it, and it makes sense. Tyreek is like a one of one talent in terms of what he could do on a football field, and so we're talking about Waddle as like a cut below elite type of talent, and Tyreek is that elite level talent. Then I'll also say that like Waddle did have really strong metrics when Tyreek was on the field too, but he didn't score touchdowns. And then on top of that, he continually dealt with injuries that forced him to miss parts of games, which made his like overall game stat line not the best. Um, distinctly remember like 2 years ago, I owned him in fantasy, and it was like, yeah, he left the game early. He left another game early. Um, and so those are some of the issues with Jalen Waddle that I see like that have popped up. Um, if he doesn't get hurt, guys, he's gonna get like there's no doubt in my mind he's gonna get at least 1,000 yards, which is basically paying off at ADP now because but then like he's the one receiver that I think has if you're one question that I was asked is like who of guys that isn't like obvious could end up as wide receiver one this year in fantasy. The answer is going to be basically nobody. But if there's one person that I had to pick, and I would just say like top five instead of top one, it's going to be Jalen Waddle. That's the guy that I would say like has the chance to elevate and put himself out there to be a 1,400 yard, 1,500 yard receiver. Um, yeah, just going to throw that out there. Hey, Meg, look forward to talking to you again sometime. We can have some more like friends conversations. Dynasty question: taking your advice on Tate, would you swap him for Flowers, or what would you ask? For? Yeah, I'd rather have Flowers than Tate. We've seen it with Flowers, and we know Flowers' situation. He's got Lamar Jackson. Lamar could leave, that's for sure. I do think they're going to try to get a deal done, um, but Flowers is truly like in that same level of talent as Jalen Waddle, where it's like this is a step below elite, like really good player. So I want Zay Flowers on my team over Carnell Tate. We're betting on like potential with Tate, and I'm getting a young good asset in Dynasty with Zay Flowers. I talked about the running back room for the Commanders, but I'll just give you my opinion again. They're giving Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt the opportunity to prove himself. I don't know if he's going to do it, but he is the guy that I want to bet on because he's the only one that I think could actually get like closer to a 3 down workload above Rashad White, even though Rashad White has the pass catching abilities already. I just don't think that they're going to want to trot Rashad White out there to run the ball. That they would still do like a split with Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt and then potentially some work with Katron Allen if something happened to Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt. Zane in the Void, that's right. Telling all my friends I'm not in leagues with about you and LOL, including random people on Reddit. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Any updates on my guy, Kalen Black? I mean, he's still injured, so there's nothing out there right now. Um, I'm just going to say that I would bet on Jordan James and that Debo might have a role in this backfield too. So if you don't want to bet on an RB2, I understand because it could just be like some sort of split between a bunch of dudes. But no update on Kalen Black's injury. It sounds like he's going to be out a little bit longer. Jalen Naylor buzz. I haven't heard much, to be quite honest. I will look out for some. I will do some deep dives for Jalen Naylor just for you. And I don't know that I have your Twitter handle or anything, but I'll make sure that I cover it on this show next time I do it, which it probably be tomorrow. What to do with Rome in Dynasty? I think Rome's a good football player. I just don't see him elevating above a wide receiver 2.5, I'll say. So like maybe he'll be wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 36 on a yearly basis. I just don't think that he is going to operate in a role that accentuates his talent comparative to Luther Burden and Colston Loveland. So could you get 1,000-yard receiver with like 8 touchdowns a couple of times? Yeah, you could. But that isn't like the 1,200 yards that you want to see out of like someone that's going to smash fantasy. So I would maybe take some swings on guys that you think are more likely to get to that level. I actually think Parker Washington is a great trade. And I think most people would probably rather have Rome than Parker Washington. But if you could do that, that's one that I think could be a really unique opportunity to potentially get in on the next Amon-Ra St. Brown instead. Other names that I would think through for Rome, I'm trying to think right now. I have underdog up, so I'm gonna go to that and see like who goes near him. Um, this is tough. Like I don't know that I have like a receiver that I'm as interested in. Is there a way you could get Jonathan Brooks? Maybe that would be interesting. Blake Corum, another one that I think would be interesting. Yeah, those are some players that I would consider potentially doing a swap for. Even if the trade value charts that you use and stuff say like those guys are more favorable. In my opinion, you're swinging for like the fences. Rome's going to be a guy that you can put into your lineup. You're not going to be sure when he's going to hit, but Jonathan Brooks could be awesome. Um, Blake Corum could end up being the RB1 in 2027. He could also Kyron could get hurt this year. They have an out with Kyron's contract for 2027. That's why I say that. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Is taking Parker at the 4-5 turn in my 12-man home league too high? Probably, because I think home leagues you don't have to pay that price. You could probably get him at the 6-7 turn. Man, I never thought I would say 6-7. But yeah, I think you might be able to get him at the 6-7 turn. If you don't feel confident that you can, I would be fine with taking him there. But home league drafts, usually you can get Parker Washington later than that. I answered the Rome dynasty question already, and I know another person had the same question, so I just wanted to make sure that that you knew that I addressed both. How would you rank the Glob, Zay, Ladd, Waddle, Garrett in one PPR redraft? This is the hardest question, to be quite honest, because I like all of them. I think Garrett Wilson's the best. I think Garrett Wilson's the best receiver, but in the worst situation. I think Waddle is the second best receiver, and in the second, I think Waddle is the second best receiver in the third best situation, and I think Ladd is the. No, I think Zay is the third best receiver in the third best situation. Man, this is tough. This is a really tough one. All right, so I've kind of said this in the past too. I would probably put Waddle as number one. I would put. This is controversial. I'd put Ladd as number two, put Zay as number three, and Garrett Wilson as number four. I do like Garrett Wilson a lot. My problem is that I'm not sure what we're going to get out of that team this season and specifically late in the season. So, yeah, I would probably lean towards the things that I think are more likely to hit, which Zay is the safest of those if you want to go safe. Waddle is like a high floor, but maybe not as safe as Zay. So I would say in order of safety, I would go Zay, Waddle, Garrett Wilson, and then Ladd. Ladd is the I think high variance play, just given I still think he is going to be the focal point of the offense. But if let's say for some reason they just really like Quentin Johnson as like a Debo-esque type of player, and then it's like a zone versus man difference, yeah, we'll see. Also, he gets hurt a lot. Think Parker gets an extension before the season. Yes. Liam Cohen kind of referenced this in one of his press conferences. He talked about Parker Washington they're working on a deal with him right now. And he said whether they get it done before training camp, whether they get it done during training camp, for preseason, whether they get it done during the season or not at all. It sounds like they're trying to get it done. That doesn't mean that Parker is going to get it done because maybe Parker believes like, dude, why don't I just play this out? Like, I'm going to get more than the 17 million that you guys are offering. I could potentially get 25 million if I do what I think I can do and what you guys have basically told me I can do this season. My lower on Omarion Hampton. No, I think the whole thing here is just that there's this cluster of dudes that like I want all of them, and it's hard to the guys that I'm like lowest on are probably Saquon, um, and Jonathan Taylor. And maybe I should be bold and just like have Omarion Hampton above them because I think that Omarion Hampton could smash fantasy too. And I feel like I just feel like less excited about Jonathan Taylor and Saquon. I think it's like bad practice to rank him above those guys, but if I wanted to be bold, I would have him above those guys. I think that I would rather, if I'm sitting in the draft chair myself, I would rather take Omarion Hampton than Jonathan Taylor and Saquon. I'll just say that. Appreciate it. I have Blake Corman, Jonathan Brooks. I'm going to rebuild, retool right now. Parker Washington for Roma Dunes for you, buddy. That's the or Roma Dunze. So that's what I would maybe say. I'm trying to see other names that you would maybe want, but are there rookies you want to draft but are concerned because the coaches haven't mentioned them at all? Good question. Let's see. I'm going to go to rookies that I. Is this a dynasty question? I'm sure you're in the chat still. If you can answer whether this is a dynasty question or if this is like a this year question. So I think there's different answers for both. Helen Eckler. I love that. I'm gonna look. Carnell Tate's one that I think is like a not this year, but maybe in the future kind of guy. But I know he's like obviously being drafted high, so it's a little bit different for him. Same with Mekhi Lemon. I said this during the pod when I was doing it. I think that Mekhi Lemon is when Jalen Hurts is not quarterback anymore pick. I would bet on him. I would let someone else draft him and then draft him in future seasons. And then I'm going to keep going with other rookies. Let's see that I haven't heard much of. Since you're saying like later guys, Jacoby Lane is someone that I'm actually hearing a lot of now. And I was hotter on Elijah Surratt, so I think this could go either way. But I do think that the number 2 target in the Ravens offense is available. Not number 2 wide receiver. I think that's going to be Rashad Bateman right now. But Bateman's going to be the deep threat role. So he's going to operate in this like underneath intermediate area. And I think that it fits the profiles of both Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt. I just don't know which one's going to win that battle. So far in training camp, it sounds like it's been Jacoby Lane, but I could see I think Surratt's the better player. And during OTAs, it sounded like it was Surratt. So don't know which one's going to win that battle. Pick your fighter on that one. Hopefully that answered your question a little bit better. I've heard of your favorite late round best ball RBs to target. Who do you like at wide receiver? If you have like rounds, that would be helpful to hear. Hopefully you're still listening, and then I can tell you who I'm interested in based off of like the rounds. Because I like or ADP, like after a certain ADP would be helpful to know too, because I think that's what I need to know in order to answer that question. I'll wait for your response, then I'll get back to it and answer this other question. What are your thoughts on Breece Hall in Dynasty? I said I'm in a rebuild and can trade him for names like Parker and Jayden Higgins plus picks. Good question. I think Breece Hall is actually set up like I think next year is the year of Breece Hall, where I'm like, dude, this guy could just elevate and ascend. I think they'll have a rookie quarterback, probably have a completely new coaching staff. Hopefully the quarterback's not complete garbage. And with the rookie quarterback, I've written about this in the past. Teams tend to lean on the run game and the short running back pass game with the rookie quarterbacks. So I think next year is the year for Brees Hall. So I'm actually like, dude, just hold him. You can use him this year. And I know you're in a rebuild, but I would just hold him because I think next year is going to be like a huge year for him and potentially in the future as well. Um, because I think they're set up really nicely on offense with Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper, A.D. Mitchell, Kenyon Sadiq, Mason Taylor. Like offensive line is like adequate enough. They might add some stuff to make that even better. It could take a step forward this year. Armar Membu going into year two. Um, I'm pretty interested in this offense. I just think that it's a year away from being where it needs to be. So I want to keep Brees Hall if I'm you. Rounds 18 to 12 for that best ball question. Okay. Um, I'm going to look at the ADPs to give you some answers here. All right. So I'm just going to start naming names. Some of these guys might not fit the ADPs that you're looking at because I might be looking at Underdog and you might be looking at DraftKings for best ball. Ryan Flournoy, definitely one. Going lower, A.D. Mitchell, another one. Dejon Stribling, definitely another one. Dontavian Wicks, Branch, definitely others that I like. I think Wicks is going to play a lot. I think he could play more than Mekhi Lemon as a hot take. And I think he fits better with what Jalen Hurts is doing in general. Zachariah Branch, I think, will eventually take that wide receiver 2 role. I'm starting to get interested in Tank Dell again. We need to see him practice in successive days, but based on how Nick Caley talked about him, it sounds like he could actually have a role. I'm now not interested in Jalen Noel as much. Pat Bryant's another one because I think that there's like a non-zero chance that he ends up usurping Cortland Sutton eventually this season. Like, let's say Sutton gets an ankle injury and just like doesn't look right, or age hits him. I think Pat Bryant's like a really actually a pretty good talent, and that he could step into that role pretty nicely. Other names that I'm looking at, Tyquan Thornton. I think that he'll play the deep threat role for the Chiefs. I'm scrolling, seeing if there's other names. Caleb Douglas, I think that he's going to get some playing time, a lot of playing time this year. Not afraid to take a shot on him. Darius Slayton, pretty clear wide receiver 2 for that Giants team right now. Think that, I mean, he gets 500 yards. It's hard to find in best ball, and sometimes he does like the spike weeks too. Still scrolling, seeing if there's anyone else. Isaiah Bond is a guy that I think he might be like a wide receiver 4 to start for the team. He might even be above that right now. But I think that Jerry Jeudy is just going to fall by the wayside, and he'll be out there a lot eventually. Super dart throw, Skylar Bell. And I'm not going to go any deeper than that right now. Okay, I think that's it, guys. I did 2 hours in about 10 minutes. For Zane Denani, follow me on X at Denani Zane, the Cut Up Show. This is the YouTube channel. You guys can find it on Spotify. In about a couple of days, you'll get to hear where I'm going to have a lot of my written work. Appreciate you guys following me, and have a great day.